Hello and welcome to today's lecture. Today we'll be focusing on color perception. There is more to color than just printing. There is also how it is perceived. Printing is based on the subtractive color process. Inks are usually printed on white or relatively white substrate. It reflects all the wavelengths of the light in equal amounts. To reproduce color on the paper, we use transparent pigments, also known as CMYK, to filter out the RGB wavelengths in various combinations. So if we look at the diagram on the right hand side, this kind of gives you the visual representation of how printers and how the world came to use cyan, magenta, and yellow, and of course black, to be the best color choices to reproduce a tonal image. So remember, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black are designed to create the most accurate lifelike photograph, to reproduce what you see with your eyes, what you see with your camera, or what you might see on the screen. So as we reviewed multiple times, RGB uses light to produce color. So if you shine all the light at your eye at once, it produces white light. And if you take away all the light, you turn off all the lights, you have black. Well, ink, the more ink we put on a page, the darker the colors are going to be, versus the less amount of ink, the light colors are just going to stay brighter. So with this diagram on the right hand side, it kind of shows you how that came to be, where these colors come from. They're not totally arbitrary, but they're very important for creating the best tonal image to be the closest to what your eye can represent when printing, while using the least amount of colors possible. Let's look at the transparent process inks as our eyes perceive them, RGB, instead of the way they are combined for the printing process. Colors are created by combining 2/3 of the wavelengths of light and subtracting 1/3 of the incident white light. So I know that sounds pretty heavy, so if we look on the right hand side, you can visually see how shining your RGB lights and taking away can emulate our CMYK colors. So this is a pretty heavy side of color. This is more so of that PhD level and not what we're going to focus on for today, but it's good to know how these colors came to be, where they came from, and what the choices are. Printing color. Printing is based on the subtractive color process. Cyan ink reflects the blue and green wavelengths and absorbs 1/3 of the red. Magenta ink reflects the blue and red wavelengths and absorbs 1/3 of the green. Yellow ink reflects the red and green wavelengths and absorbs 1/3 of the blue. Paper has a significant effect on color reproduction. A more reflective surface, such as coated paper, can be used to produce a wider range of colors than the uncoated paper. The rough surface of an uncoated paper scatters the light. This reduces the amount of light that can be reflected. So as we've gone over last week in our substrate lecture, this is kind of a refresher. So we discussed that when the paper is coated, there's a shiny layer on top. So the ink sits on top of that shine, as well as the light that shines down can be reflected up, creating the illusion of a brighter, more vibrant color source. When the paper is uncoated, it is matte and the ink tends to be absorbed into the paper, creating a duller look. But on top of that, light cannot be reflected. So light gets scattered within the material and therefore also reduces the vibrancy of what you're seeing with these colors. Viewing color. Even though most light may appear to be white, it may contain slightly different wavelengths than another white light. Think of a time where you have seen a photo in warm light and then under cold light. For example, looking at the color of your jacket inside versus outside in the natural light. Standardizing and controlling color viewing and proofing conditions can eliminate discrepancies in the color approval process. I cannot go over enough how much color is in the day-to-day world of a printer, a graphic designer, a photographer, screen arts, anything with a visual media. Light and color are going to be constant topics of conversation. So as a printer, color and light is always something we need to discuss with our customers. So ultimately the customer is always right. Ultimately we have to make what the customer wants. However, with so many variables from our monitors, what my monitor is showing to me right now may not even be the same colors that your monitor is calibrated to show you, but they're represented as the same color. Our eyes view colors differently, so whether that comes with a level of color blindness or just different variables. What is the light around you? Are you sitting somewhere with warm lights? Or are you sitting, maybe when library is open, sitting in a library that has cooler lights? More LED tends to be a lot cooler, a little bit more blue. So all of these things are factors that come into play when you're proofing a product or what you want the final product to be. Where is the product that you're printing going to be stored? If you're on packaging, well, it's going to be in a cooler light for the most part. So these are all things that need to be considered even when you're printing to ensure that your customer gets the product that they want. The goal is to find color consistency, even with so many variables. The easiest way to achieve the recommended standard viewing condition is by using a light booth. So a light booth is a tool that most print shops have, and the best thing that it is it's just a table with different light bulbs, and you can switch whether you are looking at your image through cool light, with warm light, or even sometimes they have a form of natural light. So think of a billboard. Well, it doesn't really matter if it's cool or warm because it's just going to be a natural light. So these are all things that get considered and get viewed, especially when it comes to our branding colors, such as Pantones. We'll go back to that Coca-Cola red that we discussed. Coca-Cola red's got to look the same no matter what color or what light source is around when you pick up a bottle of Coke. These are all important factors. A viewing light booth is a particular light source designed to emulate daylight and contains a balanced output of light. Surrounding colors can have a big impact on the specific colors you are trying to view, tricking your eye to perceive colors differently. Does a certain dress ring a bell? So, if we were in the classroom, I would get everyone to raise their hand whether or not they were seeing a white and gold or if they're seeing a blue or black dress. This is the best example of all sorts of factors. How bright is your screen monitor right now? What are the light sources around you right now? All sorts of different factors that can create the illusion of different colors. So the dress, and then I think a sneaker followed, and there's been many more different topics of discussion of what that light is. What do you see? So here's kind of a brief overview. So if the dress is black and blue, well, if you set a warm light, it's going to transfer some of those tones. If you have a dress that's white or gold and you're seeing it more in a blue, cooler light, well, now your whites are blues, and there's a good chance that your yellows can turn black. So it's all kind of how it's perceived, how it works, what is happening in that exact moment. Viewing color. What color is the t-shirt that the child is wearing? Black and cyan ink give the impression of an orange shirt. So this goes back to our discussion we talked on early on with the dots and how the dots work and kind of how they're layered on top of each other, the halftone dots, to kind of change the illusion. So even though we're printing with yellow, cyan, magenta, and black, we can produce brown, we can produce green by having these dots overlay each other and have different sizes. You can kind of manipulate the eye, which is pretty incredible. Black and magenta ink give the impression of a green shirt. So even though there's only two colors being printed in this moment, you can still use them to your advantage. Viewing color. Color judgments of photographic originals, color proofs, and printed samples play a large part in print production. Understanding how we perceive and reproduce color is an important aspect of the job. However, color perception is subject and can be arbitrary. Everyone has favorite colors, everyone sees color differently. No matter what, at the end of the day, it all comes down to what the customer wants. My prime example is we had a loyal customer and they were producing a liquor that they wanted an olive green color label. So when I think olive green, I think something warm, but definitely kind of a little bit darker, a little bit muddier. It's hard to explain it through the computer, but essentially the customer viewed olive green as more of a bright, vibrant green. And it was just, at the end of the day, it didn't matter. Everyone in the office thought that we picked the correct color. Customer wasn't happy. We had to redo the job. And ultimately, that's what counts. Color knowledge can help the customer, the graphic designer, the printer, and the press operator find enough common ground to hopefully produce the desired final product. Keep in mind that the human eye is very unique and easily influenced by the environment and the colors of the light. So we'll finish this lecture with kind of a little bit of a cluster. So am I looking at 4 different colors in this image, or am I looking at 3 different color images? 3 different colors in this image. Let's go back to our chat to discuss.